this part here is the part that the drawer goes into, so we'll put that aside. This part here is the end of the box, and this is an end as well. All we have to do is flip these two parts upside down and grab the nails that we need. These are our 30 to 35mm nails, and I'm going to bang them in to our timber, just so when we assemble the box we don't have to hold the nails. They'll already be in place and just need a final little tap to get them to fit. There's a couple of things you have to do when you line your nails up. If you grab another piece of 12mm pine, you'll see that you need to have it in the centre of that. I've done so many of these that I can just line it up by eye. You might need to grab your piece of spare timber, line it up and put a little line there. That way you can see where to put those nails. Okay? If you need to, some people seem to have the eye, some people struggle. This end here, you need to space those nails fairly close together. It's a bit more of a challenge. Now's your last opportunity to do a dry run, which is to assemble your box without putting glue on there. Now we do that for an important reason. So we don't want to put glue in there just to find out that something doesn't quite fit. So I'm going to grab that centre piece, get my two side pieces, line them up so both slots are at the top. If your piece of plywood has a good side and a rough side, make sure the rough side is facing down and the good side is facing up. And what you can do is to lay your end on and lay this piece in as well. What you want to check is, do your ends overlap the sides? Now, I would say it's a pretty close call in this case, and if you flip it upside down, you can see if you have any gaps this way too. Now I would say it needs a little bit taken off both sides. Now you don't just hit a plane on a bit of timber because you don't know where to take that line down to. So I'm just going to mark both ends, about 1mm off each end, and I'm going to use the plane to take a small amount off. Now the grain in this end piece is all coming upwards. We're planing end grain here. It's quite difficult to do. It'll be a little bit scruffy if you're not careful. Now we're planing side grain. It's a lot easier to plane, and you'll hopefully get a nice neat job. Okay. The pieces should all fit nicely now. You can go over, grab yourself some glue. Parts, and apply some glue to your slots. Underneath, just so the ply can overlap that bottom piece. Now, because my hands are free, what I want to do is to pull this edge over here, nice and flush with the end. Hang the nails in a little bit so that it's going to hold. Move your hand away so you're not going to hit it with a hammer. And finish those nails off. I can now line this other side up. Feels good. Okay, that looks good. Side of my bench hook. Make sure all your slots line up. And one side at a time, line it up. Squeeze it if you need to. Get those nails in a little bit. Check that it's still good. Move it a bit if you need to. And finish those nails off. Go to your other side. Line that side up. See, I've hit the hammer on the end of the timber here. Put a little bruise in that timber. We can get rid of that later on using an iron, a piece of paper towel and a piece of water. And get that dent right out. Now, very important before this glue dries to grab a square and check that your box is sitting nice and square. If it isn't, might have to manipulate it by squeezing corner to corner until it is. That looks pretty good. Once you're happy with the squareness of the box, grab your bottom piece, check that everything lines up. Now the easiest way, you should have a little bit of overhang, which I do. Check that the front lines up nicely and the back should have a little bit of overlap. We can plane that off later on. Put it on my ply. It's probably easier to put it on the box instead. That front. Back's good. And go for your smaller nails this time. You're going to need quite a few of these. Again, checking that all of these edges overlap the box a little bit. That's important because when we go to plane the box later on, we'll just take that little bit off. I'm just going to check again so that everything's still nice and square, and then you can put the rest of the nails in. Again, I'm putting these nails in by eye. If you're not very good at lining them up, you need something like this. You can hold your spare 12mm piece of ply, piece of timber against the ply, put a little line in, and then come up very well. Put a little line in, then you can see right where to put the nails. Now, I'd like to space the nails at least 2 or 3 fingers apart. you get a bit of an eye for this. On the side, I like to go one for the centre, and then halve that again. Gives you 5 nails on each side, and about 2 nails on the end. You're going to have to ask your teacher for the length of a nail punch to punch these nails in, so that they're not going to bother you when you're planing. Little tip to punching your nails is to put your finger right next to the end of the punch, pushing hard up against it and having the nail right on the end of the punch. Now, something that you have to be careful of is you don't lift your punch up onto your finger, then hit the punch down and put a hole in your finger. It'll be quite unpleasant. Okay, so make sure you're very careful. You watch the end of that punch, make sure it's up against the nail and not your finger. So your finger is touching the punch is touching your nail, and punch that in. Take fairly small taps, because if the nail punch slides off the head of the nail, you'll put a mark next to where the nail is, and then you'll have 2 holes instead of 1 to putty up. Okay, all of our nails are punched in. Now, put our pencil box into our vise, and there's a little trick for doing this, that is to lean your plane over a little bit. Therefore, you eliminate the chance of the blade taking a big chunk out of the side or the end of your box. Leave a little tiny bit just to sand, and then go the other parts. Now, we also have to be very careful if we're planing in this direction here. If we plane too much, what we'll do is it'll make a chip, nasty chip, through that grain at the back of this piece. So, to avoid that, make sure you're always planing in to the box. This side doesn't have a piece of end grain, so that side doesn't matter as much.